Over the past week, we have seen a lot of news around Bethesda games, particularly surrounding Starfield and Fallout 76. There is a lot to cover here, so let's get started. Starting with Fallout 76, you may have noticed that in my review of the Xbox Showcase, I stated that the last major expansion for this year would likely be the Atlantic City update. The reason for that speculation is that there was no more than a coming soon notice for the time frame. Well, Bethesda snuck in a tidbit during the extended showcase that said it would be coming next year. Now that leaves the rest of this year up in the air. I somehow doubt that Microsoft is going to allow Bethesda not to put out any other major updates for 6 or more months. That said, with this news, we may end up running into that very scenario. This brings us to the Once in a Blue Moon update, which releases this Tuesday. This update will introduce 2 new cryptids and some new events. The 2 cryptids will be the Blue Devil and the Ogwa. The Blue Devil is a werewolf-type creature, and while it is possible to find this creature in the open world, it will also be tied to an event. The event, called Safe and Sound, will take place at the Middle Mountain Cabins, which has been taken over by the Blue Ridge Caravan. The event will have us protect a speaker system for a bit, and the final boss ends up being the Blue Devil. This event can be tricky, but it is still fun to play. I tested it on the PTS, and I had fun with it. Like the Blue Devil, the Ogwa will be able to be found out in the wild, but it is also tied to an event. This event is called Beasts of Burden. This is also a new Blue Ridge Caravan event. In this event, you will end up fighting cultists and helping Luca Costa to get his Brahmin back. The end of the event will spawn the Ogwa. I was not able to play this event during the PTS, as my real life kind of interfered with the timing of both the event and the planned downtime for the server. That said, I am sure that this one is as fun as Safe and Sound is. Along with the update, we will also be getting Season 13 titled Shoot for the Stars. Unlike I have done in the past, I will not be going over all the cool items that you can get from this season. The reason for that change is because most of the cool items in this season are Fallout First items, and I want to focus more on the things that you don't have to pay for. Don't get me wrong, I do like that Fallout First members are getting more love, but rubbing it in people's faces is not what I plan to do. There is one thing that I do want to highlight though. Some people have complained that this season will end up being too short because the next season is scheduled to start in August. Well, Bethesda thought about this and they have included a new consumable item called Score Booster. There are several points on the scoreboard where you can get this consumable. The cool thing it does is it increases the amount of score that you can earn for a 24-hour period. This can be up to 25%, which gives us the ability to power through the scoreboard pretty quickly. There are still several things that everyone can earn this season. You still get all of the normal consumables, currency, and skins, and the camp items are on theme. What's the theme, you say? Well, we have ourselves a movie-themed season, folks. I can already see all the movie theater camp builds popping up around Appalachia. The last thing I want to cover for 76 is the new community calendar. Other than this update and season, there really isn't anything going on in June, so we're going to jump right to July. Patch 45 will drop in July. We don't have any information just yet as to what that is, so I don't want to speculate here. July 4th through the 11th is Invaders from Beyond. The 6th through the 10th is Gold Rush and Minerva's Big Sale. The 13th to the 17th is Script Surplus and Double Mutations. July 20th is the Legendary Vendor Sale. The 25th through August 8th is the Summer Camp Challenge event, and the 27th to the 31st is the Treasure Hunter and Double Mutations. August will bring us patch 46, which will introduce Season 14 titled United We Stand. Again, no details just yet as to what this update is. The 3rd through the 7th is Legendary Vendor Sale. The 10th through the 13th is QuakeCon. The 10th through the 14th is High Score, Gold Rush, Minerva's Big Sale, and Double Mutations. The 18th to the 21st is Caps Aplenty. The 24th to the 28th is Double Mutations, and the 29th through September 12th is 2 helpings of Meat Week. Finally, August 31st to September 4th is Script Surplus. The 7th through the 11th is the Legendary Vendor Sale and the Double Mutations. The 14th to the 18th is Minerva's Big Sale and Legendary Vendor Sale. The 21st to the 25th is Double Mutations and Treasure Hunter, and the 28th to October 2nd is Double Score, Gold Rush, and Script Surplus. As you can see, it really is more of the same, as the community calendar has followed the same old tired routine for years now. The only thing of note was QuakeCon and the Summer Camp Challenge event. No idea what these are just yet, but they are standing out, and they give us something to look forward to. Now that the 76 update is out of the way, we have some more information regarding Starfield. In an interview with IGN's Ryan McCaffrey, Todd Howard spoke about several things ranging from Starfield to Fallout. The first question asked was, with all the pressure around Starfield being the biggest game for Xbox since Bethesda was acquired, and the pressure from the community, is that something Todd thinks about or has conversations about in the office?
Well, clearly, I'm aware of that, everything you said. And compared to our previous games, there's always a lot of attention on what we do. We're very fortunate. But for us, we have put so much into this game. And it is, as you said, our first new IP in over 25 years. It's our first major release in about 8 years.
Yeah.
So for us, we have just put so much into it that we're just doing everything we can to make the best game that we can. Hope that everybody loves it. So we feel we're on the right track, and we're really fortunate, I think, with some of those things you said to get the attention.
Yeah.
And that we know there's a lot of people out there looking forward to it, and we just view our jobs as, hey, just do the best job we can do, put everything we can into the game, and hope everyone loves it.
Todd answered as only Todd can, and with all that said, I believe this game has been given the very best possible chance for success. Ryan then brought up the original release date that was given last year and asked, how has the extra time been spent?
Well, look, it's just such a big game. And as you do these things, you do your best as it comes to release dates and projections. But given the scale of it, if one thing is off that by a percentage, that can escalate quickly to more time. And we've really spent it most of this year playing the game a ton, over and over, and making sure that it's balanced, it's as fun as possible, honing systems and interface, obviously bug fixing and all of those things, performance, and really getting it where we're really, really sure and solid on what we're putting out there for everybody.
I have to say, while the answer was short, it was also right on the money. If one thing is off or just not right, that can make or break the game. So, has the extra time been well spent? Well, we will just have to wait and see. Ryan then moved to the elephant in the room, that being the 30 FPS issue, which happened to plague Redfall's launch.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. I think it'll come as no surprise, given our previous games. What we go for are always these huge open worlds, fully dynamic, hyper detail where anything can happen. And we do want to do that. It's 4K in the X, it's 1440 on the S. We do lock it at 30 because we want that fidelity. We want all that stuff. We don't want to sacrifice any of it. Fortunately, in this one, we've got it running great. It's often running way above that. Sometimes it's 60. But on the consoles, we do lock it because we prefer the consistency.
Yeah.
Right? We are not even thinking about it. And we don't ever want to sacrifice that experience that makes our games, really, really special. So it feels great. We're really happy with how it feels, even in the heat of battle. And we need that headroom because, in our games, really anything can happen.
So Todd did confirm that on the Xbox it will be locked at 30 FPS, but it can get up to 60, which I presume can be achieved on PC even though it was not mentioned. That said, it really depends on a lot of factors, so if you go in just expecting the 30 FPS, then you won't be disappointed. Now, I have seen a lot of people saying that 30 FPS is ridiculous and whatnot, but most people don't really understand the technical aspects behind it. First, this is not a competitive shooter like Call of Duty or Fortnite, so it doesn't need to have that high FPS that people are asking for. Second, once you go up in FPS, there is a lot of sacrifices that have to be made in terms of graphics. For games like Bethesda makes, 30 FPS is fine and will probably go unnoticed during gameplay. Ryan then asked about id Software's role in the making of Starfield.
They did not help us with the well, first of all, I'd say, being in the company, knowing the folks at id Software for a long time, I'm like a huge Doom fan.
I mean, they know what they're doing. That's why I ask.
They're the absolute best. Doom Eternal is one of my favorite games. And so with Fallout 4, they did give us a few tips on how to handle combat.
Yeah.
But in Starfield, we redid the combat ourselves, and it's really feeling great. But id has helped us really more on the graphic. They've helped us on the graphics side.
Oh, nice.
So we get into motion blur. It's just how the game feels smooth. Some other things that they do in id Tech that we wanted to bring over into Creation Engine 2, and they helped us do that. And it's great.
So the rumors were not quite right. It did help, but they did not help with the combat side of things. Rather, they helped with the graphics side. I will say this, it makes sense because much of what we see in the gameplay footage resembles what we see in games like Doom Eternal, graphically speaking, of course. Ryan next asked about the vision of the game and how it has evolved over the past 8 years.
That's a great question. I will say this, that the game sticks to the original vision. That took longer than I wanted. But I'd say about halfway through the project, you realize this is why nobody tries to make this game. So it's been when you do these things and you take some risks and you're really ambitious, that can be a very windy path sometimes, is how I'd say it. But it is true to the vision we had for our type of role-playing game set in space and where your mind kind of goes. And we want to, as much as possible, say yes to the player. Like, can I do this? Can I do this? Yes, 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 yes. And space is big. So the amount of content that we ended up making to have that really feel authentic to that, that did grow and grow from where we originally started.
I am happy to hear that the game's vision has remained intact from the start. This is good because Bethesda didn't have to compromise and give up something just to get the game out. I think this happened many times in Bethesda's history. Heck, we are all aware of the many things that have turned into cut content. I always look back at previous games and wish that Bethesda would go back and finish the stuff that they just didn't get into the final release. Hopefully this means we won't have that much cut content from Starfield. Ryan asked, what games have given inspiration to Starfield?
Well, clearly, those other games that are science fiction, I think you might look at and say, okay, this is science fiction, it's like that. I think the minute-to-minute, obviously on the ground, it has similarities to Elder Scrolls and Fallout and the things that we've made and how it feels in your hands or some certain mechanics. But believe it or not, it's the games that put you in a world, that transport you to a place. So I think it probably, also as a flow, probably has more of a feeling of like a Red Dead 2, right? Like I'm living the Western fantasy.
Yeah.
And so in this, you're living this science fiction explorer fantasy, and sometimes that's being on a barren planet and nothing is going on.
Or an Old West town, like we saw that in the direct.
Right,
Old
or
West inspired.
and all of that. So for me, it's games that where I feel I am rooted in the reality of this universe of the game, and everything else kind of disappears.
Todd's answer was perfect. I don't think of any one game that Starfield would remind me of. Instead, I think certain parts might make me think of other games. But as a complete universe, Starfield is truly its own thing. Ryan then spoke about the scope of the game and how big it is. He asked if they would be okay with people never completing the main quest, given that there is so much to do.
It's a good question. I view our job as giving people the menu.
Yeah.
Here are the things you can do. And it's a very large game. Obviously there's a lot to it. It can be complicated at times. And we have found, though, that the gaming audience, particularly our fans, they want to have all those options. And I do think more than anything we've done, I really believe this, that the more you give to Starfield, the more it gives back to you. And that was one of our goals. And so I do hope people play the main quest, and I hope people do this, but most of all, I want them ultimately to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah. I mean, I know you don't want to give away a lot about the main storyline, certainly, and people don't want to have that spoiled for them, but what I would be curious of, given, again, the scale and scope of this that the Direct conveyed and that I barely scratched the surface of when I was playing a little while ago, of these 1,000 planets, of all this stuff you've got going on, how much of it will the main story lead you towards? Like, you know what I mean? Like, because you probably want to show as much of the diversity and as many of the cool places that your team worked really hard on over the course of the campaign, but you can't show everything. You can't lead them up to 1,000 different planets, right?
We want to keep it sort of, manageable. That's what I would say in the main quest. So we hit some high points, but not even, it's still a small fraction, like you're saying, to what's in the game. And for us, like a main quest, we want it to sort of pay off. There are people that do want to come to a game, do the main story, and feel that, okay, I've won. I can now do something else. I think that's okay too. But we've also learned, look, we're sitting here, it's 12 years after Skyrim. We're looking at a game that has over 60 million copies, and all these people playing it, and they're still playing it. And so we have learned we need to build in from the beginning a game that has this long-term play thought of. So that, hopefully, people are playing Starfield a long time from it.
Again, Todd answered it perfectly. Both times it was asked. Yes, of course he wants people to play the main quest, but he also wants us to experience the rest of the game, and more importantly, enjoy it in the way that we feel is best, no matter what that is. Ryan then asked about the post-release in terms of DLC, as we have seen in past games.
Right, it's a great question. I mean, look, we're going to be doing a lot of add-on content for Starfield. We love doing it. Our fans love it. We will have announced sort of the first one that's going to, we're going to do a story expansion pack that's going to be coming. Our plan is to do things of varying sizes, and we've done a lot of that in our previous games. So it's something that we really like doing, our fans like. So despite the size of the game, there's still things we want to add as far as features in the future and stories and things like that. So we think this is going to gain, hopefully, that's going to continue for a long time that way.
So it is confirmed that we will be getting expansions for Starfield, and that he wants the game to be supported for a long time to come. I am sure this means we will not only be getting the traditional DLCs, but also end up with some form of the Creation Club. Ryan then asked for Todd to share some of his most memorable moments in playing Starfield.
Let's see, just a few weeks ago I had landed on one of the early planets and this sandstorm blew through and I went to run away from it, and this, ships can randomly, once in a while they can randomly land, like enemy ships can land. So I'm going through the sandstorm, the ship landed, and I get in this firefight and I got on the ship, and while I'm shooting the guys on the surface of the planet, the ship took off into space. So now I'm in outer space on the ship, and I was just like, can that happen? I guess that can happen. Yeah.
What he just shared gives me even more hope for this game. Being able to board a ship on a planet, and while in combat the ship takes off and you end up in space, is awesome to say the least. Ryan then asked about the special moments in the games they have made in the past, and if there are any in Starfield that just happen randomly.
I don't want to spoil what they are, but yeah, of course. We love that stuff. And we have some really, really special ones in this game that I think, I I'm very curious to see how long after the game is out, that people discover it.
There was not much given in the answer, but he did allude to some really special moments. I wonder what he might be referring to. Ryan asked, what does success look like for Starfield given the success he has seen from games like Skyrim?
That's a good question, because with Game Pass, we're obviously going to be bringing in, probably the biggest audience that we've had for a launch. And so it just makes you really fortunate to know that you can take these kind of risks with a game like this and be ambitious, but still know that it's going to get in a lot of people's hands. So, I think for us it is that, people say they love the game. And I think all games go through a couple phases. They have this phase where the game isn't out yet. What do people think of it? Then there's what do they think of it the first week it comes out? But then you got to think about, what do they think after a year? What do they think after year 2? And so I hope that, it sort of stands the test of time, like our other games. I don't focus on the number of users in that way.
But I guess you can't really design for a game that will stand the test of time, right? You just have to do your best and hope that it works out.
That is very true. You do the absolute best that you can do. Again, the whole team is we have really poured ourselves in this one over a lot of years. And, you cross your fingers, you do everything you can. There are systems you can design that say, hey, look, this system is going to work over a long-term play, over hundreds of hours, like a character system, versus, after 30, you've burned through everything. That's certainly not the case here.
Again, another great answer. I did find that near the end of the answer, he mentioned that we won't be able to complete the story in just 30 hours. I feel like there is going to be attempts made at doing just that. Though for me personally, that will not be happening. I will probably take much longer than most people. Ryan then asked about the ratio between procedural and handcrafted content.
Well, the planets themselves, the landscapes, pretty much all procedural. We kind of make these large, think kilometer-sized tiles we've generated, and those get kind of wrapped around the planet. As far as handcrafted content, more than any game we've done. I've stopped giving out numbers, but just in the dialogue, it's more than it's more than Skyrim and Fallout 4 combined, just in dialogue, right? So as we get into locations and art and everything, we've done more of it than we've ever done.
The procedurally generated stuff will be a lot, but he also made a point to say that there is more handcrafted content in Starfield than has ever been done in any game they've made. Given the size and scope of the game, I believe this to be true as well. Ryan decided to spice things up by asking about potential future game releases.
That was more of a general, it will clearly be after Elder Scrolls 6 at some point.
Okay,
let me clarify that one.
All right, go ahead.
At some point in the future.
But
Elder Scrolls 6 is the next one.
Yeah, but if Starfield's awesome and you want to do another one, and the team wants to do another one, and the company wants another one, it sounds like it's probably going to be a while.
I don't have a great answer for you there. It's an astute observation.
I'm not trying to get you to unveil the roadmap. I'm just because again, you've kept your team smaller. You have to date not grown a second team within the studio, unless you have, and that's.
Well, we have what I would call a full-size group team on 76 still.
Right.
Updating that game, it's doing great, very fortunate. But you're right in that we have gotten bigger. We have 4 studios. We have the one in Rockville, we have Montreal, we have Austin, we have Dallas. So we have gotten bigger to handle all this. We work with a lot of partners on stuff. But that doesn't speed things up necessarily, right? You need a certain size. We're relatively small comparatively,
right,
to do these things. And I think if we look at Skyrim, again, not the plan to have an Elder Scrolls 6 this far after Skyrim, but in today's day, people are playing these games for longer. So our ability, like we talked about, to support Starfield, whereas maybe in the old days you would put it out and then you'd go on to a sequel, Now we can support that game for a much longer period of time, which is what our plan is. And then as we look to like an Elder Scrolls 6, that is one where like, I probably shouldn't say this, but if I do the math, I am not getting any younger. How long do people play an Elder Scrolls for? That may be the last one I do. I don't know.
The last Elder Scrolls.
The last Elder Scrolls.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know.
I mean, I do the math as a gamer, and it's like, am I even going to be playing Elder Scrolls 6 on the Series X, or am I going to be playing that on the next thing? Because it's crazy how long the games that you make they take a long time.
I wish they did. I mean, I want them to be faster, but that speed isn't the goal.
Right. Or should it
The
be?
goal is, hey, what's the product? What's the vision? How do we do this? And how do we continue to support the ones that we currently have? Because we have millions of people playing Fallout 4, millions playing 76, Skyrim. So it's about, hopefully have that with Starfield.
While Todd did say that the Elder Scrolls is next, he did kind of waffle a bit on Fallout. To be clear, I don't believe that we will have to worry, as I am certain that Fallout is still set to be the next game after the Elder Scrolls. I think he just didn't want to get tied up in a set time frame, given that it could be a while. Of course, the next question asked was the inevitable, would you let another studio work on one of the games in the future?
I mean, I can't say never to any of that. For us, it is what's going to get us the best product.
Yeah.
How do we stay focused? I think there's a lot of times where you can get unfocused and try to do too many things at once, and then they don't end up necessarily the way you want. And so if I look at other franchises or I look at entertainment in general, I haven't noticed like the time gap between things being a negative.
Right.
They can be a negative when you think about it and you make a calendar.
Yeah.
Hey, when Starfield 2.
Look at Grand Theft Auto. Exactly. That hasn't suffered in the
or,
slightest.
The gaps between, I think Half-Life 3 will do fine. Right? So, so even though in the moment, like, how do I bring that closer to reality today? Because I want to play it. Those gaps, these are still evergreen franchises that I think when they come, it's about just doing it right.
Yeah.
This question gets asked every year, and every year Todd gives some version of the same answer. I personally don't want another studio to make a Bethesda game. I would rather have those other studios make the games they make. I liked Todd's answer as it leaves the door open even though it isn't. Ryan mentioned his time playing the game and asked what Todd's main character is like.
Well, I try to do it all. Right now, I'm digging deep on spaceships. So, I mean, you could say in some respects, this is like 5 or 6 games in one, right? It's the spaceship game, it's an on-the-ground game, it's just a dialogue game, it's an outpost game, it's a crafting game. It does all of these things, and it always is tricky for us to get a good game flow where those things don't feel like they're separate games, that they can weave in and out of them in a way that is holistically creates something greater than the sum of its parts.
I think Todd was trying not to give too much away here, because the way you choose your skills and traits will have effects on the game, thus making it a different game each playthrough. The final question asked what the feeling is that he wants to convey in each game franchise.
I mean, that's a good question. I would say if you think about Elder Scrolls with a fantasy world, who would you want to be and what would you want to do? We want to provide that.
Yeah.
And then Fallout, the same thing in a post-apocalyptic environment. How does that factor into the things you find? And how does crafting is very unique in Fallout when it comes to that? Or what's the vibe of the people? What are they sacrificing to stay alive? And then when you get to Starfield and science fiction, same sort of thing where if you were to open it up and you could do anything, how are we providing that experience? And we love exploration, so when you get into a game like this, that's why people say, why do you have 1,000 planets? Because we'd rather give you the option to do that than say no.
Yeah.
And so I think if people drift toward fantasy, they're going to love it. You know, they're going to stick with Elder Scrolls. If they like post-apocalyptic, they go to Fallout. If they like science fiction, we hope that Starfield fills that kind of desire to play that kind of thing.
While generic in response, it was very much correct. I can't think of any better way to put it. If you're into fantasy, then The Elder Scrolls is the way to go. If you're into post-apocalyptic, then Fallout is the way to go. And if sci-fi is your thing, I am sure Starfield will scratch that itch quite nicely. Ryan also got to play an hour of Starfield. He made it a point to state that an hour of playing the game is simply not enough to formulate a true opinion of the game, but based on what he did play, he was impressed. He mentioned that the game is more massive than even he thought it was going to be, and there is so much to do that we will be playing this game for years. He also made a good point in that, just like previous Bethesda games, you don't actually have to do the main story at all. You can instead choose to do whatever you want to do. I don't know about you, but the more I see of the game, the more hope I have, and the more excited I get for it. To be clear, Starfield has the potential to be one of the best games ever, and it also could be all show and no go. That said, I don't believe the game will fall flat on its face. What I do believe is that it will be fun, and we will be playing this game for years to come. So, tell me, what were your thoughts on the interview? Do you have any thoughts on the upcoming update for Fallout 76? Sound off in the comments below. While you're at it, like, subscribe, and share. And as always, I'm just glad you stopped by. And I'll see you in the next one.